the biology behind having brain fog in therapy. And this was something that I discovered as I started my own therapy. This was back in 2014. And I had ignored and avoided my own issues until I could no longer do that. And that was because my body had literally crashed. I even had to go on a medical leave. And as I started my own therapy, I started discovering how much brain fog I was having. And I noticed how much it was holding me back in being able to be present and actually integrate what I was trying to do in therapy. So I started digging into it. And as I started learning more about the brain and this idea of even neuroautoimmunity, meaning that I can have autoimmune markers and antibodies that are forming against different tissues in my brain. And I recognized that I had brain inflammation and needed to do something in order to be able to get my brain back and of course get my life back, but in this context also feel like I was going to be able to make forward progress in therapy. So that's what I want to share with you today, and it is a synopsis of the larger podcast that was released just a few days ago. This is the Biology of Trauma podcast, episode 110, and it's called Clear Your Mind, Healing at the Cellular Level. And it is with my mentor, Dr. Datis Karazian, who his book was what taught me that I had brain inflammation and what to do about it. This has been such a game changer for me that it is a big part of what I teach now as part of the trauma biology that we can have, and that keeps us stuck in the body trauma loop where we're looping between stress and trauma physiology, or that shutdown physiology. So let's go through brain inflammation, and I want to give you the highlights. I strongly recommend you go and listen to the longer podcast because it has a lot more juice than what I'm going to be able to give here. This is just for the highlights. And so as we look at the podcast episode, it is episode 110, Clear Your Mind with Dr. Dantes Crossing. You can also find it on YouTube, as well as the show notes here, where you can also drop a question and drop a comment. And there are links here to the different, some of the different nutrients and some of the different tools that I will introduce today. So, brain inflammation and therapy. Of all the biology factors that I have seen as I've started and gone through my own training in different trauma therapy modalities, everyone who's in that chronic functional freeze, in that chronic shutdown place, is experiencing brain inflammation. I have come to find that brain inflammation is a part of that trauma biology all the time. And so when we notice that we have stored trauma, brain inflammation is going to be a piece of the puzzle that we need to address. And if we don't, what will happen is that we will continue to have triggers for that brain inflammation that will not be emotional triggers. It may be food, it may be sleep, it may be travel. These are things that will trigger our brain inflammation once it's more sensitive, and we will go back into overwhelm and shut down, and we'll think that something in our life must have triggered a stored trauma, and it's not true. It's just simply that our brain inflammation got triggered because it is more sensitive now. So as we look at how to understand how we got to this place of shutdown, I want to go into some of the specifics around brain inflammation and why it shuts us down. And as we look at the role of the cells, this will be the microglia cells. These are immune cells in our brain, and they become primed. Again, I'm not going to go into that here. You can watch the full episode to learn more about that and how you know if you have primed microglia. But when brain inflammation happens, it creates a direct signal of danger to our nervous system. Our nervous system, of course, being what decides if we are safe or if we are in danger. And so we can look at the brain inflammation as being a direct danger signal to our nervous system. This is important because as we look at the cues of danger or cues of safety that come to us from all around, we can see that we might assume that we feel that we are in danger by the person who's sitting across from us, not realizing that actually it might just be my own brain inflammation. Brain inflammation is a direct cue of danger to our nervous system. And with that, there's going to be the overwhelm response that takes us into shutdown. If you understand how the body experiences trauma, you will know that the body protects us when we feel that there is a overwhelming life threat and that we are trapped and powerless, and it will shut us down in order to preserve our energy, preserve our metabolism, give us a chance to survive. And that is why when brain inflammation becomes so much that it overwhelms our biology, it will move our nervous system into that state. You can call it different terms. It's the shutdown state. There's also the dorsal vagal collapse. If you know the polyvagal theory, that's the state where our whole body goes when the brain inflammation is signaling so much danger that we just need to shut down. How would you know if it's signaling that much danger? When you feel heavy, when you feel the mental fatigue, when you notice that simple decisions like what to wear, what to cook, what to eat, these are simple decisions that shouldn't take a lot of energy. And yet, the more brain inflammation we have, the more our brain will say, I don't have the energy to even make simple decisions. If you notice that you're struggling to just get through work, that's a sign of brain inflammation. If you're having a hard time focusing, that's a sign of brain inflammation. And knowing that this brain inflammation is going to be a signal of danger to the whole nervous system and will have an effect on our whole body because of the vagus nerve, right? That brainstem nerve, and it travels through our throat, behind our esophagus, down to our stomach, and then spreads out through our digestive system. Because of that nerve that goes from our brainstem all the way down to our gut, then that is communicating shutdown to our digestive system. And everyone that I've ever seen with brain inflammation has effects on their digestive system by, again, shutting it down. It can shut down in different ways: constipation, diarrhea, decreased absorption, decreased digestion. Your food just kind of sits there, or maybe you have acid reflux because your sphincters aren't working to close that off. These are all ways in which the digestive system is not doing its job, and it's not doing its job because it is in shutdown mode. And oftentimes that shutdown mode is coming from the brain inflammation, though I will say that gut inflammation can travel back up the vagus nerve and cause brain inflammation. So when there's inflammation in the brain, it will do the same in the gut, and the gut will share the love of inflammation in the brain. And so we have this automatic shutdown that happens with the brain inflammation. So imagine now you in therapy and you're trying to process old stories. You're trying to process your childhood and you're noticing it's just hard. You feel like you're slugging through mud to try to focus and to try to do this processing, and you just don't want to talk, and you really would just rather curl up into a ball and pull the covers over your head. My friend, you have brain inflammation. And when we can learn to support that, when we can learn to what I call repair this trauma biology, it will open you up again to be able to do the work that you want to be doing in therapy. So let me just say this one more time to make sure you're getting this. Of all the different aspects of trauma biology, brain inflammation is the one that will definitely hold you back in whatever form of personal development, therapy, or trauma work that you're trying to do. And knowing its crucial role in its ability by itself to shut us down into a trauma response, we want to be repairing the brain inflammation so that that is taken out of the equation. And now we can just work with the emotional triggers and not be fighting our biology in order to just get the change in our life in our relationships and our health that we want to have. So, brain inflammation is a key player in a trauma biology. And I would want you to be carefully looking at, is this something I have if you are in therapy and feeling that it's hard? So, again, let me review how this would affect your ability to do the work and the personal development that you want to be doing in therapy. You will have difficulty staying present. Brain inflammation makes it very hard to be present and engaged. You're going to find your mind wandering off. It will trigger a shutdown response. And you're going to think that it's whatever you were just doing in therapy. And it's not true. It's just brain inflammation. Now, sometimes what you did in therapy was too much, and it is what triggered the brain inflammation. And other times, it's other biology factors that are triggering that inflammation, and it's not anything to do with emotions or your past or your trauma. It creates a biological barrier to accessing and processing our emotional content because it disconnects us from our body. It puts us into that shutdown place where we feel numb, we feel everything is overwhelming, and our body won't let us access the deeper emotions and stored memories when everything feels overwhelming. And this is where it will just make you stuck, unexplained stuckness or stagnation, where you're just not making the progress. And a lot of times it comes back to, well, the brain inflammation is playing a role. So let me briefly review what you can do about it. I am going to fly through these, and I want you to listen to the longer podcast to really get the essence of these. But you have tools, you have repair tools. You have biology of trauma repair tools. One of the most helpful ones for brain inflammation is sleep. Prioritize your sleep. Get quality sleep. I want you to be changing your sleep environment. You may need to sleep alone in the same in a room all by yourself for a period of time. You need to make it dark. You need to make it quiet. You need to make it cool. And I would want you to add naps during the day. Ideally in the midday, so sometime between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., get a 30-minute nap in. It will help reset the microglia so that they can stay going for you and not get pushed into overwhelming inflammation. We have nutrients that are powerful for brain inflammation. N-acetylcysteine is one of them. Magnesium, specifically magnesium threonate, the form that is most readily used by our neurons. GABA is one that is a calming supplement for our nervous system. It's actually one of the neurotransmitters or brain chemicals that is involved in our mood. It's the calming one. It can help calm down that, I want to call it a fire, the fire of inflammation, calm it down. And then you can look at flavonoids and antioxidants like luteolin and resveratrol. So we want to do a whole approach for brain inflammation. We want to identify the inflammation, recognize the signs. We then want to bring in sleep, optimize your sleep, and get those naps in during the day. We want to add some nutrients, nutrition, the supplements, and be able to look at how these things will start to shift. And then you'll know more of what to do based on what's working for you. But that by itself will not be enough. And so we do need to look at those other aspects that will be continuing to trigger the brain inflammation. So this is where I come back to, there are 3 levels that keep your body stuck in survival mode and danger mode. One is going to be your mind, your thoughts. I should say we have parts of us that create danger when there is no danger. We need to work with those parts in order to be able to not have them trigger our brain inflammation simply because they have decided that there is danger. We need to work at the somatic level or the movement level, the muscle, because we have somatic implicit memories of helplessness, for example. And so rather than moving to take action, we will be faced with a problem and we'll just stay right there, stuck, paralyzed. There's your freeze response. Then our body goes into shutdown, and that's what will cause brain inflammation as well. But then we bring in the biology piece, and there will be biology. If we don't sleep well, that can trigger brain inflammation. If we eat a food that we're sensitive to, that will trigger brain inflammation. If we have allergies and we're around something that is causing us an allergic reaction, that histamine will trigger brain inflammation. Toxins will trigger brain inflammation. If we have copper excess, there are lots of biology factors that by themselves will trigger brain inflammation and trigger a emotional shutdown that you will experience in your whole body as your body shuts down to protect you from exerting too much energy. So, in summary, there is a lot to say about brain inflammation for those in therapy and trying to do personal development work or trauma work. This is one of the biggest aspects that holds people back. And I would want you to know about it and have some repair tools. And I'm also going to ask that you go listen to the longer podcast to get all of it so you really are equipped with the knowledge and the tools that you need to make the change in your life that you want.